Thank you, everyone. And it's a great honor to be here today and to share a little bit more about what Cloudflare has done together with industry partners in taking down one of these newly innovative campaigns on phishing as a service. So I'm Michiel Appelman. I'm a principal solution engineer at Cloudflare. And today I'm here to talk to you about exactly that, right? We are also here at the booth in the sponsor area. So if you have any questions afterwards, feel free to drop by. Great. So $120 a month. That's basically a subscription fee that anyone can purchase or could purchase through Telegram for a turnkey phishing campaign. $120 a month basically gives any user, any malicious attacker the capability to log into different systems that are protected by two-factor or multi-factor authentication. How does it work? That's what we'll talk about today, and the things that we did to actually disrupt it and take it down. So what is Tycoon 2FA? Primarily, it's an attack campaign, but it's something more of a SaaS, software as a service business model that happens to be criminal, right? It basically came to light in 2023, and by then it was already widely believed to be a fork of a previously known phishing kit called DATSEC. It's very easy to get used to and to purchase through different types of channels, and users would basically get a full view and a dashboard of all the capabilities that this platform would show. In an attempt to evade detection and to prove some legitimacy, the attackers or the campaign actually abused some of the services that Cloudflare itself offers, together with other service providers as well. How it works? It basically captures live session tokens. So instead of just phishing for usernames and passwords, it goes a step further. The flow overall looked like this. A victim basically would click a particular link from a lure, like another phishing campaign or a QR code or something like that. It would click on that particular link. It would go to the Tycoon 2FA proxy that was running on some infrastructure provider. And that particular proxy would then reroute or proxy it directly to the original service that particular user needs to log into. It relays the username and password, but also the two-factor authentication method. So that can be a one-time PIN that shows up on a device, or any type of other SMS key or something like that. What the attackers then do is they actually hijack or intercept the actual token that is then being returned by the original service. And that token is then used to actually log into that service. So from that point, the attacker doesn't need a username, doesn't need a password, doesn't need a two-factor authentication to intercept. It has a token, and it has full access for that particular user. It was built specifically for this purpose, and it was built specifically to scale and to evade as well. The way it's scaled is by highly automated phishing attacks, and it also was a reinforcement type of attack in the sense that once, for example, email was compromised for Microsoft 365 or different type of email providers, it basically used those ways in to actually then send on, again, phishing campaigns from a trusted domain from a previous victim. The normal or the more common attack vectors were used, or the lures, and 62% of phishing attacks that were blocked by Microsoft by that time were part of this particular campaign. Interestingly, there was a lot of additional work that the attackers did to evade detection in the sense of anti-analysis. So what they did is by programming the particular proxy in such a way that it was obfuscated in the code that it ran, but it also looked into what is the user or the actual requester going to do. And so it figured out if it was triggered by an automated traffic tool or automated browser, and if so, then it would actually redirect back to the original non-malicious domain. And that made it so for researchers it was difficult to figure out because every single thing was prevented from really researching and figuring out where traffic was going. So as you can see, this is not just a 0 day, this is not just a campaign. This is something that is actually looking like a software as a service business, right? These are people that have developers, they have an actual support channel. So when a particular user that bought their service had an issue, they could actually go there, right? So it's just a SaaS business that happens to also be criminal. And similar to what businesses do, what we see as one of the new ways of thinking about what type of attacks are common and what is going on is the primary metric for this. And we call it the measure of effectiveness. And the measure of effectiveness is, from an attacker perspective and a defender perspective, something that's very much aligned to ROI, right? It's basically the return on investment. The attacker effort as a ratio as compared to the operational effort. Figuring out why would you steal or why would you build something complex with a 0 day when you can have a session token that's much more easier to get and gives you a better insight and a longer access capability. Why would you build your own server or infrastructure when you could use legitimate cloud services that would give you an edge and a fast time to market, let's call it like that. And of course, why would you write your own code when you can get AI to do it, right? All of these things combined have impact on the measure of effectiveness. Basically, it has to be fast, it has to be cheap, and it has to be scalable. And so that's also important for defenders to think about, because anything you can do to impact any of those three measurements has an impact on the measure of effectiveness and makes it less interesting for these attackers. So if you think about the scale and the scalability of the measure of effectiveness, you see that the sophistication and the complexity is always on the negative side. So basically, what you want to have is something that scales, is simple, and can be reused a lot of times. And so that's what you see here as well, with 63% of the malicious attacks or the harvested data that Cloudflare has seen were previously stolen credentials, such as from Luma Stealer that was also active last year. And 94% of those types of logins were actually automated, right? Everything is automated, it's just at a high scale, and it's basically just figuring out you just have to have a single one to actually get access to a particular system. As Cloudflare, we see 230 billion requests blocked basically every day on average last year, and that's something that's continuing to rise this year as well. Other examples, more from a nation-state perspective, is there's 4 examples here. I want to call out the Frumpy Toad example, which is based on a C2 campaign that is reusing some of the calendar and agenda capabilities that are provided by providers such as Google and Microsoft, where what happens is that the attackers, instead of building up a dedicated channel over a network connection, they build up a dedicated channel into someone's calendar. And basically what that happens is that in future agenda items, they could set obfuscated codes that would then trigger when that actual agenda item would be triggered. And data extraction would actually happen in the past events, because who looks at agenda events from the past, right? I certainly don't. And so basically they use the same capabilities and the cloud services that customers are already using to exfiltrate data and to control new capabilities within those systems. As part of the takedown of Tycoon 2FA specifically, we identified and took down 24,000 different domains. These are including staging domains that were not actively in use yet, but the visible kill list is is just a fraction of what the actual footprint was. Then there were 330 domains that were actually part of the core infrastructure of this particular campaign, and together with other organizations, we took it down. So which are those industry partners? Some familiar names obviously here. So we worked together with Microsoft, who initiated basically some of these attacks. Of course, their customers were part of the attack that happened as part of Tycoon 2FA. And we worked together to figure out, okay, so what is the actual infrastructure behind it? What are the indicators of compromise or abuse within Cloudflare's platform itself as well? And that allowed us to identify the broader platform, the broader amount of domains that were actually part of the attack as well. Then we worked together with Europol and several different other private and public organizations to figure out across borders, how can we align what are the different users and the attackers and the natural persons behind this attack that we actually need to capture. Now, what are the learnings from a technical perspective that you can take from this as a defender? Crucially, we've all done a lot of work already on two-factor authentication and multi-factor authentication. However, there's a couple of these that are still susceptible to these types of attacks because they are inherently proxyable. That basically means that, for example, with passwords that are combined then with one-time PINs or SMS verification or email, magic links or push notifications, all of these can still be intercepted by a particular proxy that, for example, was used by Tycoon 2FA. What is not as susceptible is anything that is origin-bound, we call it. And origin-bound basically means whether you have a physical key that is either inserted in your device or is stored on your device. So some of the newer platforms have these capabilities inherently in the device itself. We have client certificates that can be bound to the device as well to make sure that whenever these types of logins need to happen, they're always combined with the client certificate that is physically on the device. And hardware-based passkeys. And so passkeys is something much more recent, but at the same time, this is also a capability that definitely would help in these types of situations. We do know that there's a difficulty or a reduced capability in actually moving to these new origin-bound type of authentication flows, and that's prevented by legacy applications, procurement processes, and things like that. However, in these types of situations, especially with the abundance of these attacks, this is definitely going to be much more of a strong point and a strong piece of focus for a lot of our customers and industry partners. If you look at it from a more broader perspective, we also need to consider not only the actual act of authenticating a particular user that is using a particular device, but also during the session itself, making sure that that particular session is used by the user that is actually intended for it, that it's actually intended for. And so what we have as a capability in that regard is to not only inspect at the authentication time, but during the full life cycle of the session as well. That means that you could, for example, figure out a way to do token binding, which basically binds directly this particular session to a TLS session, which also prevents proxying. Shorter lifespans, of course, always help in this regard as well, because that basically means that a user would need to re-authenticate and prevent too much leaking of information for longer times across these types of services. And then finally, the best version of this is a continuous evaluation of the of the session. So thinking about when the risk signals change, when a user or a session of a user switches all of a sudden from one IP to the other. Unfortunately, it's not as easy as that because, of course, users do normally switch IPs, but there's a much more granular way that we can think about how do you really look at the session in general in the broadest sense. And you do not want to wait for re-authentication. So in summary, one of the key things that popped up is that Tycoon 2FA, as I mentioned before, was a fork of a previous phishing kit. And a new version of Tycoon 2FA and its descendants are already being built and are actually already being sold to the same channels. So that means that although the takedown was a success, that also means that there's now new innovation going on again, and there's a new round of things that are happening for these types of campaigns. What that means for you is that the adversary is optimizing for throughput, right? Again, cheap, fast, and scalable. And so as a defender, we need to figure out ways where we can impact these three things to make it much more effective, to impact the measure of effectiveness. That's when we really can figure out, and that's where we really achieve our goal for a way that we can persistently and continuously block these types of attacks instead of just waiting for the next takedown of a particular campaign. So I want to thank you first and foremost for your attention for this particular topic. Some of the research and the numbers and the examples from the capabilities and the nation-state actors and the trends are captured in the Cloudflare threat report from this year that was released 2 months ago. Emerging tactics and techniques, trends, which cybercrime, what are the top recommendations as part of this? You heard already a couple, but there's a couple more here that are in here as well. We have a great team that's local here present today. If you have any questions, feel free to drop by later. And once again, thank you so much and have a great rest of the day.
So thank you very much. We're going to catch one of the questions as well for you.
Of course.
So we have time for one question. First hand up gets a question. In that case, it's my hand.
I
saw a hand over there. Yeah.
There's one hand over there.
Oh, yeah.
We can take that one. Thank you.
Hello, thank you. Is this on? Can you hear me? Oh, no? No? Thank you very much for a really interesting presentation. Understandably, it focused on cyber risk. My question in the criminal space is how much are you seeing crossover between regular cybercrime and fraud and scams?
Between regular cybercrime and scams, I don't know. I don't really have a particular ratio. I think, again, the scam itself and the cybercrime, I think they're kind of related in the sense, but they make different trade-offs between how much effort and resources they stick to one another, right? Because inherently, the result is different as well. So I'm not 100% sure on the ratio, but yeah.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, and thank you again to Michiel.
Yeah, thank you.